Hey guys, what's up? So today I want to talk to you about discounts. And there are two kinds, and they are a great tool for you to adjust your pricing to the customer. What we see is that there is a fact in the market. Larger customers do not want to pay the same as smaller customers on a per unit basis. I'm going to break down each of them for you to explain how they work, why we need usually both of them, depending on what kind of sales model we have, and how you can use them. So yesterday, I got a call from a founder that I advise. So I've been advising him and his co-founder for 2 years almost. They just raised a Series A, and they have just hired their first enterprise sales rep, selling to customers that are 5 to 10 times larger than the customer base that they built their Series A on. And basically, he had the following question. Well, the price tag from the pricing model comes out to $4,000 a month for this client, but they only want to pay $3,000. Should we close them? So I had a conversation with him. We arrived at something, but I want to sort of break it down for you guys too. And essentially, it comes down to discounting, meaning two different things, and we shouldn't confuse them. So for me, discounting can be split into two. First, you have what I call structural discounts. These are predetermined, given in your pricing model, price tags on the unit that you're charging that are different depending on volume. So this can be a price per user that if you have one user, it is whatever, $100 per month. If you have 1,000 users, it's something else, $20 per month. But this is predetermined. It's available to view for any customer to see that your pricing model essentially structures pricing in this way that the last unit isn't as expensive as the first unit. So this is a structural discount. The other types of discounts are sales discounts. So sales discounts are discounts that your sales rep can give the customer to close the sale. I'm going to break down each of them for you to explain how they work, why we need usually both of them, depending on what kind of sales model we have, and how you can use them. Okay, so the first thing is the structural discount. A lot of you guys will have started out with a pretty simple pricing model. I have a piece of software, it does a thing, and we're going to charge it by another thing, by users, by price per gigabyte, by price per API call, by price per active template, or whatever it is that your solution does. Okay. Usually, a piece of software solution starts out by scoping a relatively tight piece of the market. So you have product market fit with a specific type of customer, which also usually means a specific size of customer. So whatever it is that you charge by, templates or API calls or whatever, usually sits in a pretty narrow range, which makes the price point for that narrow range relatively easy to determine. So let's just use users as an example, because I think most people can relate to that, right? So let's say that you're used to selling a piece of software where your customer would have between 5 and 30 users. Okay, so the range isn't that big from 5 to 30, it's sort of a 6x, and none of these user categories are super large. So it's not 10,000 users and so forth. So likely you will have come up through trial and error with some sort of a price point that is sort of right for that range. Let's just say it's $100 per user per month. And you might begin to feel at the higher end, at 30 users, that you get a bit of pushback, that your customers are saying, well, I like the software, but at this price tag, it's going to be $3,000 a month. So, that's a lot of money, and maybe you could do it for less. So you start to give discounts. Usually the founders give the discounts at an early stage in a company, but it can also be the sales reps and so forth. And importantly here, actually, there's this implicit psychology that the salesperson, founder or sales rep, tends to agree with the customer, that there is some sort of implicit, obvious fact in play that, well, if I buy more, I get it for less per unit, right? So the actual total price will increase for every user, but there should be some sort of volume discount. This is not always true, but often it's true. And the argument seems pretty solid. And so let's just go with that for now. There are reasons for when it might not be true. And part of this has to do with your costs, not you get a little bit of scale on a customer. Everybody recognizes that. So the your surplus in the transaction becomes bigger as farther up you go. So if you deliver to someone with 1,000 customers, they feel that you get more out of it on a per customer basis than if you deliver to just two. Oh, sorry. So there are a couple of reasons for this, for why this sort of volume argument works. And one is that it seems implicitly obvious for everyone that you have a larger surplus from the transaction as a seller with a customer that has more units. So you get sort of more out of every user if you sell to a 1,000 user customer. So you essentially have economies of scale within a single account, within a single customer. So you will earn more per user from a 1,000 user customer that pays you $100 per user than you will on a 2-user customer, because you're delivering software and it's just that much more easy to deliver. This is true even in business models that have a very high degree of variable costs, like you're delivering cleaning services. If I buy 2 hours of cleaning service, those 2 hours cost more than if I buy 20,000 hours of cleaning services. So everybody assumes that if you have to deliver more, you can get economies of scale in that delivery, and hence you shouldn't be capturing all of that surplus at the high volumes. So there is a psychology in play there. The other psychology is on the customer side that, hey, I'm big, I have purchasing power, you would want this money that I'm, about to shop around with, so I could place it with someone else, aka your competitor, or with you, so that purchasing power will have to be reflected in the price. So you have these sort of two. One is sort of more fairness based, and the other is more, let's say, purely bargaining based. But both of these psychologies are at play, pushing the unit economics a little tighter at larger volumes. Everybody seems to recognize this. Okay, so what happens is that you have an example where you go from 5 to 30 users, and then suddenly you go up market a bit. So you go to 50 users, or you sell to someone with 100 users or 500 users. And this can be, active templates or, parking spots, or whatever it is that the pricing metric of your software solution is. I'm just using users as an example here. So what usually happens is that you have not properly discovered what the right price point is at these larger volumes, at 500 users. So you will, in that situation with that client, the first time you reach that client, guess or estimate. And part of that estimation happens in the negotiation with that client. So let's say that someone comes along with 500 users and say, well, we only want to pay 20 per user. And you're like, okay, 20 times 500 is still 10,000 a month. That's a big client. I want to close them. I'm going to ask for, well, I can't ask for 100 because of the two psychological reasons that I just mentioned, but I'm going to argue, and then I'm going to ask for 50. Okay, so that would be 25,000 a month. That's still a 50% discount, and then you essentially bang it out in sales, and you close them that, let's say, 30. Okay, next customer comes along. They have 200 users, same process. Next customer comes along, 700 users, and so forth. Fast forward 2 years, and you look at all the sales that you've made, and they're all over the place, right? Larger clients, because also there are fewer of them, tends to be closed at way different prices. Some are closed at $50 per user, some are closed at 15, some are closed at 25, some are closed with all sorts of varying degrees of, you get 20 for the first year, and then it ups to 25, and then so we have a tapering discount over some years, or you get 50% the first year, and then 40, and then it stabilizes, or you get this add-on for free, so it's product specific and so forth. So what we want to avoid here is that we're solving a structural problem, a market problem with sales discounts, right? So what we see is that there is a fact in the market: larger customers do not want to pay the same as smaller customers on a per unit basis. We are now, in this example that I just gave, solving it with allowing the sales rep to do their best in the individual sales and close the customer. The result is going to be that your price execution, the prices that you actually sell at over time, are going to be with a high degree of variance. So they're going to be all over the place, which also means that they're going to be very dependent on whether your sales rep had a good day, right? just to be honest, and which sales rep it was. We all know that some sales reps just close at higher prices if given the ability, and will have much more discipline in defending your price points and defending your product's value. So that happens. But also what happens is that now, let's say 2 years into this going up market process with your higher volumes and hence higher prices, you will now have an array or range of, let's say, quote unquote, enterprise deals or larger deals that are closed at all sorts of prices that you can't touch. Because what you have done is that you have written contracts with a lot of relatively large companies selling your solution to them that are different. So one contract isn't like the other. There are different price points in them. There are different tapering discounts. There might be different terms and conditions. There might be different price points related to certain products. So that's also differentiated and so forth. So this does a few things. One is it doesn't execute your prices very well. But two, also it's very hard to change. So you have a very hard time going back to 100 contracts that are all different and raising prices on them should your product have that pricing power. So let's say that 2 years in, you spend a lot on development, your product actually is now much better. And you can see that de facto, all of these legacy customers are now underpaying because you closed them a couple of years ago when your product wasn't that good, but at the prices that you could using sales discounts, but now you actually want to raise prices. But just from an operational standpoint, it's just really difficult to, because you have to pick up every single contract and say, hey, what did we do here back in August of whatever, 2020, right? And then next contract and next contract. You have to write each of them an email and maybe even open up new negotiations, say, hey guys, we want to raise prices, but the contract says that you have to agree to that, and so forth. This is called commercial debt. So, and it's exactly the same concept as technical debt, except it applies to all your commercial contracts. So technical debt is, I'm just going to pile code upon code upon code to, add new features and push them into the market because I want speed now instead of scale later. And then later it becomes really hard to maintain. Same thing with commercial contracts. You just pile them on top of each other in a sort of hodgepodge, unstructured fashion, and later it becomes really hard to scale. And it creates a lot of operational drag. Okay, you don't want that. Trust me. The better way is to take a look at your market, the customers that you're selling to now, and the customers that you will be selling to later, let's say the larger customers, or maybe even the small customers if you want to go down market, and then say, okay, so what are the right price points for these types of customers? And then estimating it. And here's how you estimate that. So you have some sort of a unit price established somehow. And even if you don't, you might have a guess. So just start with that and say, hey, I have this guess that this, per user price should be $100, or my price per, storefront square meter that I'm charging by should be like $10 a month. Whatever it is, start there. And then ask yourself the question, for who? Who is this price the right one for? Because usually that initial price point idea is tied to some sort of a customer avatar or an ideal customer profile, an ICP. And just be honest with that impression. Like, oh, I talked to this customer and they told me that this would be a good price. And that's why $100 stuck around my mind. Okay. So you have some sort of a match to a price point per unit, per user, let's say, and some sort of customer size. And then you extrapolate from that, go down and up. And you ask yourself two questions. The first question is, at what price would I sell to the smallest possible customer in my market? And maybe that is one user, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's 20 users for whatever it is that you do, right? Maybe you don't charge per user, you charge per employees. And you say, well, below 20 employees, our software just doesn't make sense. So that's where we start. Maybe you charge per shopping mall or per store in shopping malls. And you say, well, the smallest strip malls that we would sell to would have 10 storefronts. So that's the smallest unit that we could deliver the solution to, and it would make sense for us. And then you just figure out what is the right price for those guys. So I had a conversation the other day where we were selling analytics software to airports, and I asked the product manager and the owner of the solution, say, hey, what is the smallest possible annual revenue that you want to earn on an airport? And he said, well, $30,000. Okay. So, and then we have a unit for him, and that was sensors, and we say, well, how many sensors do they have? And he said, well, they have 10 sensors. That's sort of the smallest possible airport customer that he has. Okay, so 30,000, 10 sensors. That sounds like it's 3,000 per sensor per year. Okay, park that for a second. And then let's go up market and say, okay, so what is now the potentially largest customer that we have in the market, like the global top one customer that we could sell this to? And for the airport, it would be, something like, well, they would have 5,000 sensors, and it would probably be like, let's just say 5 million to make the math easy. Like, so let's say it would be $5 million a year, 5,000 sensors. Okay, so that sounds like it's $1,000 per sensor at the largest possible customer, while it's $3,000 per sensor at the smallest possible customer. And if we do this with users, you might say, well, if at 20 users, I sort of want to sell it for $2,000 a month. That's my smallest price point. And the largest price point I could sell to would be someone like 5,000 users potentially across something. And I think I could get something like, 50,000 a month. Okay, so that means that at 5,000 users, 50,000, that's $10 per user. But at 20 users and $2,000, that's 100 users. So now you actually have, with these two examples, your structural discount, right? So in the first, we had from $3,000 a sensor to $1,000 a sensor between the smallest possible customer in your market and the largest possible customer in your market. And in the other example, in the user example, we had, well, $100 per user at 20 users and $10 per user at 5,000 users. So now you need to draw a line or curve between $100 to 10 across a volume spectrum, and from a $3,000 per sensor to 1,000 on a volume spectrum. And you could do this in tranches, or you can do this in, straight discounts, but map it out. So take a spreadsheet and say, well, from 20 users to 50 is going to be $100, and from 51 to 100 users is going to be $45. Whatever makes sense to you and your market and the size increments that you face, just map something like that out that takes you from $100 per user to 10, or in the sensor example, from 3,000 to 1,000. Okay, if that becomes really difficult, you might add a specific trick, which is a flat fee. So let's say that in the airport example, that the airport says, well, we're never going to pay 3,000 per sensor. So then you might say, okay, so you have your range. That is your structural discount. Now, the structural discount should be openly available to your customers when you're trying to sell them, right? So if you have $100 per user and you have $10 per user at 5,000 users, you actually want to show this to your customer, right? So let's say that a customer walks through the door and they have 500 users, right? If you just show them the $100 per user price, they could already tell, for the two psychological reasons that I went through earlier, that they're not going to pay $100 per user. Like, they are bigger than that. They would want some kind of discount, but they don't know which discount, right? So they're asking like, hey, what's your scale? Like, how much surplus are you getting from selling to someone like me that is sort of unfairly given to you if I pay a full 100? And also, what kind of purchasing power do I have in getting a better price from you? So they will just try to squeeze you, right? If you already lay out the spreadsheet saying, you know what, if you were at 20 users, you would pay 100. In order to get a price of 10, you would have 5,000 users. You would need to have that volume, but you don't. You have 500 users, and at that price, we want to sell to you at 70, let's say. Now your structural discounts actually supports your sale because they show the customer where they fit in to the discount model. They're like, okay, I have 500 users. I think that's a lot. So, but I'm now going to pay 70 a user. So that is 3,500, right? Okay, do I think that's good or bad? Who knows, right? But at least I can see I'm not paying 5,000, which would be like the price of no discount, no volume discounts if I only had a few users. And also, I'm not going to get to, no, I'm not going to pay. So at 70, they would pay, with 500 users, they would pay 35,000. 35,000, they're not paying 50,000. And also, they're not paying 5,000, which would be the $10 price, right? So you get what I mean, right? So the important thing is that the pricing structure, the discount structure, is giving the customer reference points. The reference points of no discount if I was small and maximum discount if I was super large. So these reference points are, let's say, framing the pricing discussion for your customer, saying, hey, we recognize that you're big and you want some discount, right? We're giving that to you. Don't worry. But there are limits to it, and these are the limits. So the pricing model works like this. If your price is going to be 70, you're already getting a 30% discount from being small, but you're not getting a super large discount. And if you wanted the price at, let's say, 60, you can already tell that you would need, and you just look up into the spreadsheet, that you would need to be at 1,000 users, let's say. Okay, so this is a really good tool for your sales rep to close the sale at that price, because it's going to create some structure. It's going to close that customer sort of relatively close to home at that price, and it's going to give you a starting point. So the next thing now becomes, if the customer doesn't like that price, right? And this is actually sort of going back to the founder that called me yesterday. We had a similar structure in place. There were, this is rental units, and the customer had 400 plus rental units, and we're used to selling to 30 to 50 rental units. And suddenly we have a $4,000 a month client that wants to pay only $3,000. So what we're doing here is we put in place a structural discount, a slope between price per unit at a low volume and price per unit at a high volume. And now we get one data point, a customer that says, I see the pricing that you give me, but I still want an additional discount. Okay, so this is where you have to ask yourselves a question. Is it the structure that's wrong? Is my discount slope, my price per unit, simply not favorable enough for bigger clients? Maybe. Or can I simply close this with sales discounts? Okay, so when you're just pushing your structural discounts into the market, this is the key question, because you don't have a lot of data points. If you're doing enterprise sales, so my client only had like 6 leads on this new pricing model for the past 2 months, right? So, and he closed 4 of them, and then now 2 said no on price. So who knows if the structural discount is right? Like presumably he's closing 66%, right? So that's pretty good. But also the 2 that says no are a little bit bigger than the 4 that say yes. So what happens is that the psychology really takes over, even though the amount of data that you have in sales is just not a lot. So really we have to ask ourselves the ultimate question again, like what would we sell the biggest potential client for? Like at what price is that? And is there some sort of relatively linear, or let's just say sensible relationship along the different progression steps? And let's say the biggest potential client that he has in the markets that he's active in is something like 100,000 units, right? So we're far off with 400 units, right? So we're still like a factor of 25x off, right? So 250x off. So he's way off on the price limits that he's selling to. Okay, so let me wrap this back up. So the question is, should we adjust the structural discount, or should we give a sales discount? At this point, when you have put a structural discount in place in the market, a pricing slope, a model that shows customers what price they get at what sizes, you try to solve for the discrepancy or the gap for each individual customer with a sales discount. And I have 5 steps of sales discounts that I give, and they're ordered. So you should give number 1 first, try, and then try with number 2, and then so forth, all the way down to 5. And the 5 steps are time limited discounts, short. So it's going to be like, hey, buy now and get the first 3 months for free. Okay, so the customer closes at full price, but gets a little bit of time limited discount upfront for free or at a reduced price. Or let's say, hey, get the rest of the year half price off, something like that. Number 2, time limited long. Okay, I'm going to sign you at full price, but the next 3 years, you're going to get a 30% discount, right? Okay, so the price that you actually want, you're going to get that, but only for 3 years. Then I'm going to get the price that I want, which is sort of full price. And then, if you don't like it by then, you churn. That's sort of the implicit agreement with the client. 3, terms and conditions discount, which is going to be something like, okay, so, and they might stack, right? So you might say, okay, so I'm going to give you the 30% discount for 3 years, but also you're going to get better payment terms, better cancellation terms, the no price increases on the core pricing for 3 years, or whatever it might be. These needs to be predetermined by you in your sales operating procedure, not imagined on the spot by the sales rep. So you should have a small catalog of valuable terms and condition discounts to give to your customers that you can break out in case of emergency if the client really wants to close, but only given these concessions. Number 4, permanent discount, but only on parts of the product. So it's going to be like, okay, so the core product is full price, but this add-on is going to be half price for you forever. Okay, so now we're talking about a permanent discount. 5, permanent discount. Like, okay, I'm going to sell to you, but it's going to be 20% off forever, right? That is your last resort, last ditch, balls to the wall, Hail Mary discount, which, because what it tells you is that either you're getting desperate and you shouldn't get desperate, or your structural discounts are off, right? So if your sales discounts can't just like close the gap from a psychology angle with attaching the current customer to your existing pricing model, but have to essentially create something different for them, like an actual long-term, permanent, different price for a customer. Either you're just not good at selling that customer and you should just let them go, or your structural discounts are off. You're actually trying to overprice the market, and then you need to lower them. So this is why you should almost never use these permanent discounts, because it's going to tell you that either you have a quarter to close that is just, you're going to fail if you don't close it. You can't raise money, or you're going to be so off budget that it's a serious problem, and you are going to now accrue commercial debt by closing this customer. So you're just going to say, fuck it, let's do it, and do it, and know that you have, the chickens will come home to roost at some point when you start to do this. Your sales reps will become less disciplined. They will start to execute at lower prices. You will have commercial debt, so it will be harder operationally to handle these customers. Word will get around between your customers because they talk that prices can be squeezed a little bit, and so forth. The chickens will come home to roost, right? So it could be that your pricing is right, but you're just weak right now. So you're, making a short-term call on a long-term impact. And sometimes we need to do that, but oftentimes don't. The other can be, well, you're actually wrong. Your structural discount isn't, let's say, flat enough to really capture the size of customers that you're going after, right? Which is like, okay, so we were wrong. We need to change our pricing. So you go back and you say, well, maybe the largest customer isn't, $10 per user or $1,000 per sensor, whatever it was. That we said maybe they are less than that, and we need to adjust our entire slope, right? So that is absolutely a possibility. And why I advise to when you push a new structural discount into the market, to give a really big discount mandate to sales, to say something like, okay, so we've never sold to these customers before. We think they can pay whatever, $10 per user at super large volumes. And, at 1,000 users, they would pay 50, but we don't know. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to send you into the market and try to sell to these customers. And we're going to allow you to give a 50% discount for 7 years, or a 70% discount for 10 years. Like, it doesn't matter. It could be ridiculously long. So you have the structure of the discount, so you have time limited long, and you can give large discounts for a long time in order to figure out where the market sits at volumes that you've never sold to before, and then close at that for a sales cycle or 2 or 3, and then reassess. Because what you're going to have now is you're going to have a little bit of an experiment that looks like you don't have a structural discount, that you have a lot of sales discounts that are affecting your price, which means your price is going to be all over the place, right? So you can say, well, we got 100 leads in and we closed them at 100 different prices. But now you get to look at those and say, well, it is a contained experiment. They're all time limited. At some point in time, the commercial debt will pay itself off, because they're going to time out and they're going to be at full price in some time. This is what Salesforce did when they launched. They said, well, for 10 years, we're going to give you a special price, which is going to be 90% discount year 1 and 80% discount year 2, 70% discount year 3. So they did a 10-year tapering discount. And everybody that bought Salesforce from an enterprise level the first years were like, okay, so whenever we're paying any real money, I'm going to be like in my next job. Fine, we're going to buy your CRM system, right? So that's how they did it. But also it allowed them to discover what the right price points were for enterprise customers in a multi-year sales process, right? Using these sales discounts as a tool, and then sort of wrapping up all of these contracts at higher prices at a uniform structure in the end, right? So that's essentially what you're trying to do in a micro format, or maybe in that format if you have that time horizon. So you're saying, okay, so we're going to run a sales cycle 2. We're going to see what happens if I give a large mandate for discounts to my sales reps. And then looking at that, we say, well, what did my best reps close at? What are sort of is there sort of a trend line in prices per unit that I can draw that is meaningfully different from the structural discount that I set in place? And if so, let's adjust the structural discount. But if you just say, well, okay, it seems like we got it sort of right, we're just giving some discounts, you just reduce the mandate of discounts. You're just saying, okay, so structural discounts are what they are, but now you can only give discounts up to, let's say, 20% for 2 years, right? So instead of 50 for 5 years or whatever it is that you had. So you are going to reduce the amount of discounts that your sales reps can put on top of the structural discounts and then run with that. So really what you want to do when trying to price adjust to different types of customers in your market is first think about the problem structurally. You say, okay, so there are real powers at play that demand different price points at different volumes. Okay, just accept that, but then try to structure that so that you get a uniform, disciplined, well scaling, easy to operate result out of it, where you also get to sort of measure individual sales reps and close at relatively uniform prices. That's the structural discount. Ask, what is the price that I would pay, that I would want from the smallest possible customer in my market? And what is the price that I want from my largest possible customer in my market? And then try to draw a line from that. And then, massage it in or close it with actual sales discounts, asking yourself sort of the 5-step questions: time limited short, time limited long, terms and conditions, permanent discounts, but only on parts of the product, like a free add-on, and then permanent discounts, which is like these two are just last ditch, which tells you either you have a growth problem that you're accruing commercial debt to solve it right now, or your structural discount isn't good enough, right? So these are last ditch. Okay, I hope this gives you some inspiration for how to solve pricing at different volume levels across your customers. This is sort of what I do with everyone, from 1 million ARR startups who are trying to go up market or trying to go down market, and we want product growth and how to do that. So discount curve, like what's the right price for small, what's the right price for big, just start with common sense in this. It's going to be, and run some customer examples. It's going to be way better than you trying to A/B split test or something else. That you do with, if you have inbound and outbound sales, you do that with the sales discount. And also it's the same process if you run, 18-month sales cycles with enterprise sales and you only, a good year is closing 10 customers. Same thing. We're going to try to figure out what is the unit price or unit economic at the smallest possible customer versus the largest one. What's the relationship? What's the curve, the slope between these two price points? And how do we then put every other customer in the market on this slope? That is the structural discount. This is sort of the model. This is what we show the customers. And then we close with sales discounts, and we try to have the gap or the mandate for sales discounts be as small as possible, realizing that it has to start big and then grow small over time. Okay, guys, I hope it makes sense. I hope it's useful. I learn every day on these things, but this framework or this way of viewing discounts has been really helpful to me over the years, and can be executed with a lot of common sense in organizations, and without the need, it can add value, but without the need to do huge data projects, which actually usually tends up to not to add that much value to this discussion anyways. So I hope you can use it, and like and subscribe, and let me know if you have questions in the comments. All right, cheers.